The way of the sea was the most direct route to the promised land. But the Egyptians had forts along that road. So the Lord guided the Israelites along a route that took them toward the Red Sea. The Lord then directed the Israelites to camp beside the Red Sea. However, when Pharaoh decided to pursue them, this location appeared to entrap them between the Egyptian army and the sea. All they could see was disaster. Then Moses said to the Israelites, "Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring today." In that moment, the Israelites learned something about God that they would never forget. For generations to come, Old Testament historians, poets, and prophets would recall the deliverance of Israel at the Red Sea. In this seminal moment in history, Israel discovered how God leads, protects, and delivers his people. The promise of deliverance applies as much to us as it did to Israel. Verse 14 of our passage says, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only be still." So let's start. Question number 1. Verse 10 says the Israelites looked up and saw the Egyptians approaching. I'm going to focus first on Pharaoh. What might Pharaoh have thought when he saw the Israelites had set their camp, when he saw where the Israelites had set up their camp for the night? Just let me start by saying there's some commentators who say that the Red Sea is somewhere over here. And then there are others who say it's here. There's some who say that Sinai is in the Sinai Peninsula, so we are not sure. I'm not trying to claim that this is archaeologically accurate. But I like the idea that it is over here, outside of Egypt. And again, you might have a map in your Bible that has the Red Sea crossing appearing here. And mine has it appearing here. Because they had to pass certain locations on the way. And therefore, that might be the reason. Again, not an archaeological scholar by any means. Almost unimportant, the detail, but it could be important to some of you. I'm going to go with this location here. Because we know that Horeb or Sinai is, well, maybe that's not going to go anywhere. Where he was originally for 40 years, in that location, Midian. And since Midian is over here, I'm going to bet that, I'm not betting that, I'm going to guess that this is a good enough location. Plus, there's a large enough body of water here, and there's not a large body of water up here. If you want to be, you don't have to be Charlton Heston to get the impression of this wide sea being parted with the waters piling up on either side. But you want to understand that this was something very, very dramatic. Very dramatic. Unheard of, unseen, and therefore you want to go with a large body of water. That's just me. Of course, when they cross to Jordan, that's a smaller affair. Yes?
There's archaeological, modern day ones have found a pillar at the site that you're talking about. And that there's a land bridge at the site you're talking about that makes them think that this, what you're talking about is the more accurate one, and because of the places they had to pass through.
Okay. So question number 1. What might Pharaoh have thought when he saw where they were? And pretend you're Pharaoh. No, probably not. What might Pharaoh have thought?
Deal. This is going to be easier.
It's because right there on that site is a high cliff, and there was nowhere. I mean, they were in like a cove. There was no place for them to go. Whereas at the old site, it's more a sea of reeds, sort of spread out.
Okay. Thank you for that experience. I haven't gone yet. I look forward to going.
Honestly, I looked that up a few years ago during the Bible study of Exodus. I didn't actually see that.
Pharaoh had thought before he left Egypt that they had gone loony in the desert. Okay. That's what verse... Oh, God told Moses in verse 3, Pharaoh will think the Israelites are wandering around the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert. And God said, I will harden Pharaoh's heart. They're wandering around in confusion. All right, let's go away from Pharaoh's line of thinking, which obviously was hard for us to do. And let's move to the Israelites' way of thinking. Verses 11 and 12. Question number 2. What emotions did the Israelites show when they saw the Egyptian army marching toward them? There are three things mentioned, or four, in verses 10 through 12. So let's identify what is being said. What emotions did the Israelites show when they saw the army?
They were angry.
They're afraid. They're afraid they're going to die.
So there's fear.
Whiny.
I heard anger. Who were they angry at? Anger.
It's just the women that were whining.
What else? What else do you see there?
Leave us alone.
Anxious.
Anxious. Tell me what leave us alone might look like. You're already out here, caught between the Pharaoh and the deep Red Sea.
Well, I think it was the first time they said it was better for us to have stayed in Egypt and been their slaves.
So what word could I use for that?
Despair.
Despair.
Giving up.
Despair. I hope I spelled that correctly.
I think, personally, fear is the biggest one, because I think if they had really given up, there was always the option of them trying to turn themselves over to Pharaoh and beg forgiveness and go back. But they didn't reach that point. We always say in our family, anger is a secondary emotion. Usually anger is caused by something, embarrassment, fear, whatever the case may be. The anger is a secondary emotion. And I think now they were more fearful than anything. And I don't think they'd hit the point of despair because they didn't turn themselves over to Pharaoh. I think they were fearful, and in that fear, their secondary emotion was to be angry at Moses.
Okay. Any other comment? You look up, you panic. Okay. We have nowhere to go. Question number 3. Back at verse 10. The Israelites were more focused on the enemy that was pursuing them than on God, who had just demonstrated the power and ability to deliver them. Just got them out of Egypt miraculously.
Well, and people point out to the Israelites and say, how can they do that? But you've got to remember, for 300 years, they didn't have a spiritual leader. I mean, what they did keep of their faith and religion was a belief in a one God as opposed to multiple gods. But they didn't have the spiritual leader that we have been told about. And maybe, and so they were not used to relying on God. And they were definitely scared and didn't have a history of faith in the lifetime of those who were leaving. So in one way I can understand why, I can understand why they panicked at all, but I can understand why they maybe thought, God can't take care of us. He hasn't hasn't taken care of us for 300 years.
But He just delivered them?
Why? Well, yeah, but that was a one-time thing and it could be a fluke.
Oh, no. Yes.
Because of the plagues. God had sent all these plagues in order for them for the Pharaoh, to show the Pharaoh he needed to let him go. So it wasn't really a one-time thing. They'd seen all of these miracles that God had performed in order for them to be free from Pharaoh.
That's part of
But
it.
how easily we forgive them. Yeah, you just hush now. Easily we forget. Now it's your turn, Mark.
Is it okay, Annie? To me, this is all part of the human condition. All of us in here, I'm assuming, are biblical people. We've been marvelously and wonderfully saved. And, oh my gosh, I lost my job, now what's going to happen? I might as well go shoot myself. You know what I mean? It's just the way we are. We're fallen creatures, saved by grace, but we still have that fallen thing kind of creeping into us all the time.
When things are good.
Mm-hmm. Oh, praise the Lord. Yeah, fantastic.
But when things go bad.
Yeah, where are you now?
Yeah.
What have you done for me? What have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
Well, I think question 3 puts it, words it perfectly, that they took their eyes off God and they were focusing on the enemy. So they were,
Right.
saying, though, I really think that the human person is wired to fear. It's that fight or flight. You know, that's just an automatic reaction. Oh, you know, all these people are coming after me. You know, and you're not going to, your first reaction is to fear.
Now, I would have to say that there were probably, out of that 1 million, 2 million, whichever number you want to go with, I've heard 3 million, there are people who believed that Moses was God's chosen instrument for them. But there were also people in that crowd who were not sure that Moses had the authority that he claimed. And I think that when you see the complaining, you know that in any large crowd or audience, there's several sides. So even though it says the people, you only need one voice to yell above everybody else. And you say the people did this. And the others who should know better and slap this guy and say, be quiet. Or like, give him space to vent his anger. And therefore you have the crowd that, think of when Jesus came riding into Jerusalem. Hosanna! A few days later, crucify him. It was different people in the crowd speaking up. So I think that there were those who trusted that God had chosen Moses, but there were those who were not sure that Moses was indeed who he claimed to be. And Moses himself wasn't even sure. He said, Lord, I can't do this. I can't speak. And I'm sure that Moses had a lot of fear. Why he trusted. And there's an old adage that says if you're trusting, you're not doubting. And if you're doubting, you're not trusting. That's not how it goes. If you're worrying, you're not trusting. And if you're trusting, you're not worrying. But I think that you can have, I'm trusting, but, you know, it's not an all or nothing thing. It is some degree somewhere there. Again, the theologians can help me out on this. Can you trust and worry simultaneously?
Not worry, have concern.
Have concern. How is this going to work out? How do you keep your eye on the prize? I say you got to keep your eye on the destination. Okay, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. Even if I meander, it's kind of like the guy driving and the wife is trying to tell him to use the map and he is trying to figure it out without the map. Sorry.
Don't forget that the Israelites, while they were in Egypt and were slaves, were provided with everything that they ate. That was part of the system. There were whole villages that were built for the workers. In one sense, they didn't have to worry about where their next meal was coming from because Pharaoh provided it. And now they're out in the desert and, excuse me, is there any food around here? And they're just beginning to realize what their freedom entailed. All the responsibility of providing for themselves as opposing to have Pharaoh's supply line.
We're giving you freedom. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Work.
Exactly.
I say a true journey of faith. You don't know it very well put. You don't know where your next meal is coming from. And then when they murmured, they said, at least back in Egypt, we had food. And now we're out here. It's going to be 40 years of manna and quail.
But at this point, they hadn't got the manna yet.
Well, the quail didn't come till later.
All right, let's go to, let's go to question number 4. And look at verses 13 and 14. Of course, Moses was ready when they raised their objections and their fears because God had told him what he needed to do. I wonder if Moses shared the plan, the details of the plan, or he just says, your job is to follow. I can't stand here and explain to 2 million people how this is going to work.
Well, I think you just answered. How do you tell 2 million people?
So he said, you gotta trust me. God has made a way. And they get up, camping here, and the Red Sea, they're thinking, okay, where are we going to go? Gee, man, this is, because clearly, if my map has any representation, why go this way when you could have just cut across the desert? Unless the terrain is so hard that staying close to the water gives them a greater chance of finding survivable materials. But this is the shortest distance between 2 points if they have to come to this location. Obviously, this way is out because Pharaoh has put his forts along this road. These were very popular trade routes. So they were avoiding that one. They didn't know why, but because God had told Moses, remember, the sign is that you're going to come right back here and worship. This is where he's going to give them the law, the 10 Commandments, and organize them as a nation. So this was destined for them to come in this location. But did Moses explain all this to them? I'm going to bet he did not. He said, okay, God has led you out. Now trust. You know what a testimony is? It's a telling of what God has done. And he's thinking, okay, guys, you've just been delivered. Reflect on that. Even if the journey is hard, reflect on the deliverance that just took place. But their short memories and their grumblings tell them, you know what? We don't see what the future looks like. You brought us out here to die. We can't think about the victory we had when we can't see a clear future ahead of us. So question number 4. Moses very confidently, I think, answers, or pretending to be confident. What does Moses say in verses 13 and 14?
Do not.
Okay, do not fear. Do not fear. One more time. Stand firm. Okay, I've got it right over here. Stand firm. Can anyone use a different translation for stand firm? Whatever comes to your mind, or
It says stand still.
stand still. Anything else?
And then I think the most important one is you will see your deliverance today. Not sometime in the future. Now.
Anything else?
The Egyptians you see today, you'll never see again.
They will die. These guys have no future. Anything else?
The Lord will fight for you.
The Lord will fight for you. I love that one.
Me too, that should be at the top.
If my wife were here, she'd tell you that that's my mantra. The Lord will fight my battles. I claim it, even when my heart is not quite there. Lord, I expect you to fight my battles. I expect you to part the sea so that I can cross this dry land here between this muddy water.
I didn't think there was a
Really?
I don't know what to say. Probably. But there was a condition attached to that the Lord will fight for you. You could preach on this. Only be still.
Only be still. So he repeats that. The Lord will fight for you. It could be a stillness, a quietness. It could be a watch. Don't do anything. Don't show fear. A dog is about to attack you, or a wild animal, don't show fear. In the inside you're feeling the fear, but don't show the fear. Because even if the Egyptians saw your fear, God has this battle won already. Still, you're thinking, okay, there's a body of water in front of us. How is this going to work? The enemy behind, as I said earlier, between the Pharaoh and the deep Red Sea. How is this going to work? But God has a plan, and Moses is aware of the plan. Question number 5. When do we find it most difficult to be still or to stand firm?
When I'm awake.
For me, it's when I'm with a group of people who are grumbling. I tend to fall into the grumbling mode really fast. But some of the most exciting times in my life have been when I did stand still and said, okay, it's going to be fun watching to see how God's going to work this out. And He always does.
Well, I'm finding this dichotomy is like the analogy of getting a job. It's like I have to do something too for the Lord to get me that job. And in this case, it's like you're being told, well, don't do anything. It's kind of unnatural. If you buy what I said, that this is one of the greatest miracles in the Bible, And this is no ordinary situation of I need to send up my application for the job. This is God is going to deliver big time. So whatever worries you have, even if you worry, He's still got it. This is a fantastic experience.
Stillness is inside. And you can still do those things, like apply for a job, but not with an anxious spirit, but with I release it to you.
It just occurred to me that the song we chose had the word still in it, in a different way. It says, when we cannot see our way, let us trust and still obey. Trust. When we cannot see our way, let us trust. And that's what they were being asked to do, to trust, to be patient, to wait on God for Him to do what only God can do. Again, this is no ordinary circumstance. This is the most dramatic thing that happened to the children of Israel. So it is no small potatoes, if I can use that expression. So the part B of the question, what are the ways we can practice being still before God?
Prayer, obviously.
Reading the Word.
Fasting.
Okay. Meditation. What do the rest of you do? Sorry. It's like that.
Well, all the things I think that have been spoken often are done in private by yourself. So I think it's come apart, come away from. Even the Scripture often tells us to share our burdens and the cords that are tied, those kind of things. For me, it's getting apart, being by myself, and letting God speak to me, not external voices.
Yeah, I have to start with a song to get me in the right space. And though worship is bigger than I get into a mode, I find a song, and reflect on that. Before I pray, if I do pray, because sometimes I don't pray. Well, prayer is talking to God, but I don't get into a formal attitude of prayer. It's, Lord, you promised, and I'm expecting that you're going to deliver. So even though it is a stillness as far as other people are concerned, it's a communion with God about how He will handle the situation for me. Question number 6. How did the Lord show that He was protecting His people? And this is 19 through 22. What do you see in those verses? How did the Lord show that He had this?
He had a pillar of fire or an angel. I mean, it was something they could see.
Okay.
The angel he'd been in front of them, and now he went behind them to protect from the enemy coming at them from behind.
So the angel of the Lord became the rear guard.
Right.
I'm going to be between you. The fear that you have, God is standing in the gap to try to be a rear guard against that. What else is going on here? Two things are moving to the rear.
Well, the pillar of cloud.
The pillar of cloud also moved from in front to behind.
Light in the darkness.
Anything else? Let's move to the part B of the question. How does God protect us today?
He has angels all around us that we can't see that protect us.
I think of the many verses, Psalm 23 comes to mind. The Good Shepherd. The Lord is that Good Shepherd. And the protection might be with taking His rod and His staff, both the rod and the staff, to comfort us, to protect us from the circumstances, to pull us back when we're going off into worry land, and also to make a way where He provides and shows.
Scripture says, I will neither leave you nor forsake you.
So even though you have a sense as to how it should work, sometimes you can get distracted. Question number 7. Do you sometimes find yourself struggling to confidently walk with God? And what might you do during those times that would enhance your trust?
Count your blessings.
Very good. Count your blessing. That's a great thing to do. count your blessings. Look back at what he has done. Count them. And it will surprise you what he has done. And when you know what he has done, there's another song that mentions when you look at what he has done, how it will give you confidence for what he will do. There are many verses that you can think on. Be of good cheer, for I will overcome. But back to Psalm 23. Though I walk, and this one is amazing to me, through the valley of the shadow of death. In other words, this is the valley of shadow of death. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear, because God is with me. Having that much assurance that he is with you, despite all of the ugliness that's going on around you. That is an affirmation, if there's an affirmation. I was going to ask in question number 8 about the east wind, but I'm going to skip that. Well, maybe not skip it. So here is the east. For those of you who are into meteorology, we describe the wind from the direction it's coming. So an east wind is a wind coming from the east. And it's coming across the sea, and it's going to part the waters. I can imagine this 1 million or 2 million people there just shivering because this wind is so strong as it parts the waters, and it's probably blowing them away. Maybe it's directed down at the water to part the water. However this miracle occurs, this is a fantastic thing. Pardon me?
And
Made the bottom enough to...
Yes.
It dries the bottom out.
Now, if it's sand, the water quickly sinks, so you'll get what looks like dry land there. But it's pretty amazing what happened there. Question?
And the thing, there is in the Red Sea, in the Gulf of Suez, whatever they call it nowadays, there are spots where the sea bottom is closer to the top than others. There are hills and valleys in that area. God had to put those there thousands, if not millions of years before in order to have it there when he needed to use it.
Question number 9.
One thing.
Yes.
I was reading in my commentary, in the next chapter in verse 8, it refers to the poet praises the Lord and calls the wind the blast of your nostrils, affirming that the miracle occurred in accordance with God's timing and under his direction. What power.
Yes. You have to get in your head that this is the greatest miracle. The deliverance that night was a great miracle. But this is also a fantastic miracle. And that's why I say we have to equate all of this with what Jesus did on Calvary. At some level, not equate, but think it in those terms. This is salvation. This is, I can't save myself. Only God can save me. And that's what's going on there. You know how we say that we're all born in sin and shaped in iniquity. And there's no way that we could save ourselves. We need Jesus to save us. These people needed that miracle to take place. So if you get the enormity of this experience, it is like Christ dying for us as Christians as far as the Hebrew people are concerned. He is delivering us from bondage to freedom. Even after the freedom, we are going to complain, but it is that gargantuan. I say pivotal in the next question. In what way did the crossing of the Red Sea become a pivotal moment in Israel's history? I think that, as I said, the burning bush was pivotal for Moses. The delivery out of Egypt was pivotal. But God has given them a hope and a future. Here's how pivotal it is. As soon as they cross, they sing this song of victory called the Song of Moses or the Song of Miriam. And I don't know how often Jews are supposed to sing that song, if it's once per year or once per week. But that song of victory is sung very frequently to commemorate what God has done for them. The same way we sing about what Jesus has done for us. This is how important that event is in the Hebrew culture.
Well, I think it was the first time that God had fought the battle for Israel. In their history, the first time he'd ever done that. He would go on to do it later. Many times when they were claiming the land with Joshua and they were going through and killing people, he would fight the battle for them many, many times. You know, Jericho comes to mind and some of those other battles. But this was the first time that he fought for the nation.
Okay.
And it's also referenced many times in the Bible at different points. When people were losing faith, prophets would say, the same God who delivered us from Pharaoh. It's referenced at different points because it was such a pivotal moment for them. It's the first time God ever fought their battle for them.
Remember in Egypt, they went from a family of 70 to whatever millions they are. And for that 400 years, we're not exactly sure how they're interacting, but they're growing as a population, much to the chagrin of the Pharaoh who is thinking, we got to get rid of the baby boys, we got to throw them in the Nile, we have to enslave them so they're worn out, so they can't reproduce, whatever. At some level, Pharaoh wanted them gone. On the other hand, he wanted them as free labor. So he was conflicted about what he wanted. And I keep thinking, I don't know how to deal with this for a fact, but if he had continued to have the baby boys killed, remember Moses hidden in the Nile? Moses is now 80 years old. I can't imagine that for 80 years he had this edict to continue to kill the baby boys, because in 80 years you're going to have a population of females. And we're told that 600,000 men were on that journey, plus women and children.
Well, there was probably more than one Pharaoh during those 80 years.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
In fact, when God spoke to Moses, he said, the Pharaoh who wanted to get you is now dead. Therefore, so for that 40-year period between when he left Egypt and when he is told to return to Egypt, he was told the Pharaoh who sought your life has passed on, and there's a new Pharaoh. So you should go as Moses was trying to object. Question number 10. How could looking back on a moment like crossing the Red Sea be a source of help and strength for God's people moving forward? Think about testimonies in your life. How does looking back on Calvary or on your salvation, either one, what the Lord has done for me at Calvary or what the Lord has done for me when He came into my heart, how can looking back at that experience help you moving forward? How does it help you, I should ask? Do you reflect?
Looking back at me, personally, renewed strength, renewed faith. Because sometimes I forget what all we did, and then I have to stop.
I just remember the words of the song, when upon life's billows, your tempest tossed, when you are discouraged, thinking all is lost, count your many blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. So looking back has value when it helps you to reassure yourself. And if they had looked back and said, you know what happened here was fantastic, we're going to trust, but they were not there yet. They were like, oh yeah, that happened, but now there's no food. And the enemy is coming after us, and we are going to die in the desert, so this is a rock and a hard place. Maybe we would be better off back in Egypt. At least there's no one trying to kill us, as it were. Question number 11. In what ways might people need God deliverance today? There are many things we need to be delivered from.
We need to be delivered from fear, anger, anxiety, and despair.
I'm going to give you an A. A plus.
But I think we also need to be, once we're delivered from those things, we also need to be delivered from our past. Because there's never a shortage of people that will remind us of who we used to be, even after we've been saved. And I think a lot of people, how many people have we met that say that they don't believe they're good enough for God to save them because of what they've done in the past? And I think sometimes the past is one of the biggest hindrances to people coming to Christ.
Okay, sorry. I was a little distracted there. So I want us in closing to think on these things. Think about how you still yourself. Be still, my soul, the Lord is on thy side. How you stand back and watch the salvation of God delivering you, because if He has made you a promise, someone mentioned earlier that He will not leave you nor forsake you, then either you claim the promise or you doubt the promise. It is unfortunate that we don't all get the same kind of experiences. I might be talking to myself right now. It's hard to not be attentive over there. There's a song I used a few weeks ago that said, once I thought I walked with Jesus, yet such changeful feelings had, sometimes doubting, sometimes trusting, sometimes joyful, sometimes sad. Oh, the peace my Savior gives, peace I never knew before, and my way has brighter grown since I've learned to trust Him more. So we are in that place where we are, okay, yes, Lord, you delivered me. Okay, this is personal application for the last minute here. Personal application. We are the children of Israel. Because we get delivered. And then we doubt. And we don't always go back to thinking about the deliverance. We get salvation. It's gone. And then we fall back into habits and thoughts. It's one of the saddest things. But if you understand the journey, that the moment of salvation doesn't totally transform your life, your physical life. You still have the same friends, the same relationships, the same job, the same circumstances. It is more of the assurance of what God has done for you, getting you out of this sin state and claiming you as His own and offering you eternal life. The journey is still going to be a journey of bumps. And the question is, how do I change my attitude? An attitude adjustment. So that you say, I'm going to look back what you've done. Praise you for all that's past, one songwriter says, and trust you for all that's to come. I'll go in the strength of the Lord is the name of the song. Closing thought.
When I was young, I didn't have very many experiences in what the Lord has done for me personally, major ones. But thankfully, my parents had shared with me their experiences as they had grown in the Lord. And I can remember saying, well, my mom and dad went through this, and then they went through this, and God saw them through. Now, I have plenty of experiences that I can share, and often do, and it opens up doors that I never thought would be open by just sharing what God has done for me, giving a brief testimony.
Yes. And maybe we need space to do that, because your testimony can bless me when I'm going through my hard times. Now I know who to go to and say, you know what, here's what I'm going through. You can share. It's amazing how when you announce what you're going through, there are people who are put in your way to help you. I've gone through this before.
So every time I feel like throwing in the towel, I just think, if I don't have Christ in my life, I have no hope. You know, I can't. That's the thing about the world. I don't know how people survive when they have no hope. And that's the gift that I value the most, is that my relationship with Christ gives me a hope that millions of people don't have, but that He's with me and He's going to get me through this.
Closing thought. Stand firm. Be still and see the deliverance that God will bring to you today. And verse 14, the Lord will fight for you. You need only be still. Let's pray. We're going to claim these promises, dear God, that you will fight for us, and we need to be still. Help us to turn it over to you and not try to own it for ourselves where we are trying to solve it. We need, dear God, for you to give us that assurance that you will indeed fight our battles for us. Give us peace, dear God, and help us to understand that you have our back. Thank you for this lesson and what it has taught us about our own faith journey. May we be strengthened and encouraged because of it. May we look back at what you have done and look forward to what you will do, trusting you. Help us to trust you simply every single day of our lives, regardless of the path. And may we have the victories to share with others so they can also claim the victories. Make us a blessing today, dear God, to someone. In Jesus' name. Amen.